The U.S. Supreme Court has dropped a bombshell ruling today regarding former President Donald Trump. It has decided that Trump has immunity from prosecution for official acts as president. But that immunity does not extend to unofficial or private acts. The ruling comes as federal prosecutors are pushing a case against Trump for allegedly plotting to subvert the 2020 elections. We're joined now by journalist Benji Heyer. Benji, walk us through this ruling.
Natasha, when this landmark, historic, long-awaited ruling was handed down, there was a boisterous atmosphere outside the Supreme Court and then, frankly, quite a bit of confusion to work out what it all means. The court has held that a former president, for example, in this case Donald Trump, would be able to have immunity from core constitutional powers and a presumption of immunity from official acts taken in office, but no immunity for unofficial acts. Now, there needs to be still some clarity as to what exactly that means, the distinction between official and unofficial. Justices have intervened in this by saying that under the banner of official would include, for example, Donald Trump's communications with his then Vice President Mike Pence, telling him not to certify the election outcome in 2020. That is the core of the prosecution's case against Donald Trump, looking into his alleged efforts to overturn that vote, which culminated, of course, in those scenes we saw, that deadly riot on January 6, 2021 at the US Capitol. Justices also saying that Donald Trump's speech from that morning, inspiring his supporters to go down and march to the heart of American democracy, well, that too counts as an official act. But ultimately, it then leaves the rest of the distinction, official versus unofficial, to lower courts, kicking the can down the road, delaying a potential trial that might have come before November's general election. That has cued outrage from some Liberal justices who say this decision reshapes the institution of the presidency, makes a mockery, they say, of the principle that no man is above the law. Justice Sotomayor, and particularly relaying her fears of far-reaching consequences. She claims, in theory, that this precedent could protect a president if they ordered the assassination of a political rival. Even if these nightmare scenarios never play out, she says, the damage has already been done.
And she being one of the dissenting voices on the Supreme Court. Benji, break down for us how exactly the vote went.
Well, it was a 6-3 vote along ideological lines, 6 Conservative, 3 Liberal. And even though the Supreme Court is a separate entity from the legislature, from the executive branch of government, the reality is that it's still an institution with political weight. 3 of the Supreme Court justices that handed down this ruling are Donald Trump appointees. It is no surprise that he has been elated and expressed relief at this ruling. He calls it a big win for the Constitution and democracy. And even though he's branding it as a victory, President Joe Biden's re-election campaign says this doesn't change the facts of what happened on January 6, 2021. A statement put out by his campaign reads, "The American people already rejected Donald Trump's self-obsessed quest for power once. Joe Biden will make sure they reject it for good in November," claiming that Trump is willing to do everything to gain and to hold on power for himself. Special counsel Jack Smith, who overseen this case as part of the Department of Justice, he has so far declined to comment.
Journalist Benji Heyer in Washington, thank you so much. Okay, let's dig a bit deeper and turn now to Charlie Hunt. He's a political scientist at Boise State University. Charlie, thanks so much for making time for us.
Thanks, Natasha.
Charlie, we've dissected a bit about the law, but now with you, I'd really like to get into the politics of this, particularly as the campaign moves forward towards the November elections. Our colleague Benji was talking about how the Biden administration is responding, or at least the Biden campaign. I wonder from your perspective how Biden and his team are going to use this moving forward.
It's a great question. A lot of times in these campaigns, the fight isn't about sort of two sides of one issue. It's about what issue are we talking about. The Trump campaign would prefer to talk about things like the economy and immigration and issues they think are not so great for Joe Biden. Biden administration, the Biden campaign would certainly rather talk about Donald Trump and his various misdeeds while in office, including, of course, the violent incitement at the Capitol on January 6th. as his term was ending. And, on the one hand, this does give sort of a legal win to the Trump to the Trump campaign, but it doesn't prevent Joe Biden from talking about it. And even though the trial doesn't seem like it's going to happen before the election, it does look like there are going to need to be things like evidentiary hearings on some of these official versus unofficial acts that will put this in the spotlight. And so although legally speaking, it's a win for Trump, I don't think this issue is going away anytime soon.
Do you think it's going to dog him on the campaign?
I think it's likely to. Polling does indicate that there are a number of voters, not necessarily a ton, but a lot of the voters that are sort of swing voters that could go one way or the other. A lot of them are really put off by Donald Trump's role and their perception of his role in the January 6th insurrection. And if the campaign becomes about that to a large degree, if the attention can be drawn away from things like perceptions around inflation and the economy, or issues around Joe Biden's age, which have certainly come up in the last week since the presidential debate the other day, then I do think that could be a problem for Donald Trump.
Let's talk about the upcoming Republican convention. I mean, it seems that Trump is going to get the nomination no matter what. I mean, he's full steam ahead. That party's not having the kind of conversations that the Democrats are having, at least behind closed doors. But could this decision by the Supreme Court nudge any of his detractors a bit further to say, hey, maybe we need someone who's got a clean record here?
Oh, no, I think the Republican Party is pretty dead set around Donald Trump at this point. I think they have been for the better part of a year at this point. Donald Trump was indicted and then convicted on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records and things in the state of New York. And then he had his biggest fundraising day of the year in the 24 hours after that. A lot of these things do have the tendency to rally his support and get his supporters circling the wagons to support him. At the same time, he doesn't necessarily want all this ammunition out there. But no, with the convention coming up, they're full steam ahead behind Donald Trump, even if the Democrats are having a little bit of an identity crisis around what they want to do about Joe Biden.
There was a split screen moment earlier today where you have Trump and the decision with the Supreme Court, but you also have his former advisor, Steve Bannon, entering into prison in Connecticut for a 4-month sentence for essentially defying the subpoena to appear before the committee looking into the January 7th uprising. And could that proximity between Bannon and Trump become an issue at all?
I mean, it doesn't. It certainly doesn't help the campaign. I mean, and Bannon isn't the only one. Rudy Giuliani, the former mayor of New York City and presidential candidate, and then advisor and lawyer for President Trump, he's under all kinds of indictments as well. There are a number of other folks around him indicted in his other felony case, the Georgia case. But none of that appears to have much of an impact on how Republican Party elites, so elected officials, senators, representatives, governors who are currently in office, whether or not they support Donald Trump or not, that doesn't appear to have any impact there. They seem pretty unified. And I think a lot of folks, anyone out there and any American voters who know who Steve Bannon is already either really hate him or really love him. The average voter, I'm guessing, doesn't have a great idea who he is. And so I'm not sure that's going to have a huge impact.
Charlie, before I let you go, I mean, today's conversation's really been centered around the Supreme Court decision. But from a slightly stepping back perspective, we've got a president facing multiple criminal charges, working his way through the courts on varying levels. He's moving forward full steam ahead. And then we've got a nominee who's the current president of the United States, where there is so much concern about his well-being. Not so much about the age, but the mental ability, the mental acuity of this person to hold such a powerful position. And these are the two options for the country moving forward. I just wonder, as a political scientist, looking at this moment in time in your country, how do you explain this?
To say that we are in uncharted territory is underselling to the point of exhaustion. We have two nominees. They're the two presumptive nominees. The conventions haven't happened yet, but I think even after the last few days, presumably Biden will stay as the nominee. And all kinds of voters, including those who say they support Biden or support Trump, say they are disenchanted, don't love either of these guys. A lot of voters who we've been calling sort of double haters, folks who say they disapprove of Joe Biden and they disapprove of Donald Trump, and they don't love being put in the position of having to choose one of them. But there are lots of things about the American system of elections and how we do our primary elections that have led to these two guys, this rematch of 2020. A lot of Americans aren't happy about it, but as of right now, these are the two choices that we seem to have, and a lot of Americans will have to make up their mind between now and November.
Okay, and we know a lot could happen between now and November. Charlie Hunt, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Natasha.